The rescue shuttle landed in a cloud of steam and melted ice. Its engines were loud in the morning silence, breaking the peace that had settled over the frozen moon after the storm. Elder Mako was the first one off the shuttle. He had not planned to come himself. He had meant to send younger warriors, stronger fighters, who could handle whatever they found down here. But when he woke that morning, something had pulled him out of his bed and onto this ship. He wanted to see with his own eyes. Behind him came a team of 10 Velki soldiers. They carried weapons and medical equipment and body bags. They were ready for anything. Or they thought they were. "The crash site is this way," Darrow said, pointing toward the scattered wreckage in the distance. "The sensors show 3 Velki life signs in a cave nearby, and one other reading that is unclear." "Unclear?" Mako repeated. "It might be human. It might be an equipment error. The human should be dead by now. The calculations were very clear about that." Mako said nothing. He started walking toward the cave, his old legs moving steadily across the frozen ground. The soldiers followed, spreading out into a protective formation. As they got closer, Mako saw the trail. Footprints in the snow, small and close together. Cub prints. They led from the cave to the wreckage and back again. And there were marks in the snow, long scratches where something heavy had been dragged. "The cubs left the cave during the storm," one of the soldiers said, surprised. "Why would they do that?" Mako did not answer. He kept walking, his eyes fixed on the dark opening in the rocks ahead. When he reached the cave, he stopped. The sight before him made him forget how to breathe. Inside the cave, near a fire that had burned down to glowing coals, lay a human woman. She was wrapped in bandages and covered in blankets that the cubs must have found in the wreckage. Her face was pale but not white. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths. She was alive, and around her, like guards protecting a treasure, were 3 Velki cubs. They were pressed against her from all sides, their small bodies giving her warmth. Their eyes were open and alert, watching the entrance of the cave with the fierce, protective gaze of predators guarding their pack. When they saw Elder Mako, they did not move. They did not run to him or cry with relief. They stayed exactly where they were, as if daring anyone to try and separate them from the human. "You came," Barrow said. His voice was hoarse and tired, but there was steel in it. The voice of someone who had faced death and refused to blink. "She needs more medicine. The box is almost empty. We used everything we could find." Mako stared at the cub. This was not the same child who had left the main ship yesterday. That child had been soft and spoiled, raised in comfort and safety. This child was different. This child had fire in his eyes. "You went into the storm," Mako said slowly. "You found medical supplies. You treated her wounds. Yes, you saved her life." Barrow looked at the human beside him. Something soft came into his eyes, something that Mako recognized from his own long-ago childhood. It was the look of someone who had found something worth protecting. "She saved us first," Barrow said simply. "We were just returning the favor." The soldiers came forward with their equipment. They checked Yuna's vital signs and gave her more medicine. They wrapped her in heating blankets and prepared a stretcher to carry her back to the shuttle. As they worked, Mako watched the cubs. They never left Yuna's side. When the soldiers tried to move her, Kira growled at them until they let the cubs help. When they lifted the stretcher, Tal insisted on walking beside it, his small paw resting on Yuna's hand. And when they carried her out of the cave and into the morning light, Thara walked in front, leading the way as if he were a warrior escorting his commander. They said the human would not survive. The predator cubs came back, carrying emergency med-boxes. The words echoed in Mako's mind as they walked back to the shuttle. He had lived a long time. He had seen many things, but he had never seen anything like this. On the shuttle, the medical team took over. They hooked Yuna up to machines that beeped and hummed. They gave her fluids and medicine and heat. They did everything they could to bring her back from the edge of death. The cubs refused to leave the medical bay. The soldiers tried to take them to a separate area where they could rest, but they would not go. They sat in the corner, watching the doctors work, their eyes never leaving Yuna's face. Finally, after what felt like hours, the chief medical officer turned to Elder Mako. "She will live," he said. There was surprise in his voice. "I do not understand how. By all logic, she should have died hours ago. The blood loss alone should have killed her. But somehow, she held on. And the treatment the cubs gave her, rough as it was, stopped the worst of the bleeding and bought her enough time." "Humans are strange creatures," Mako said quietly. "They do not die when they should." "Yes, that is one way to put it." Mako walked over to where the cubs sat. They looked up at him with tired, suspicious eyes. They did not trust him. They did not trust anyone right now except each other and the human who had protected them. Mako understood. He would have felt the same way in their place. He lowered himself down slowly until he was sitting on the floor with them. His old bones protested, but he ignored them. "You did well," he said. "All three of you. You showed courage and wisdom beyond your years. Your families will be proud." Barrow shook his head. "We did not do it for our families. We did it for her. I know." Mako paused, choosing his next words carefully. "We told ourselves that humans were weak, that they were prey, that they could not survive in our world." He looked at the human woman on the medical bed, still pale but breathing steadily. "We were wrong." "Yes," Barrow agreed. "You were." There was no anger in the cub's voice. Just truth. Simple and clear. Mako nodded slowly. "She will need time to recover. Weeks, perhaps months. During that time, she will need people to care for her, to help her heal." He looked at the three cubs. "Would you like to be those people?" The cubs looked at each other. Then they looked at Mako. And then, for the first time since the rescue team had arrived, Tal smiled. "Yes," he said. "We would like that very much." 3 days later, Yuna woke up. She opened her eyes slowly, confused by the strange ceiling above her and the soft bed beneath her. For a moment, she did not know where she was. Then she felt something warm and furry pressed against her side. She turned her head. 3 Velki cubs were curled up on the bed with her. Barrow was on her left, Kira on her right, and little Tal was sleeping on her feet. They were all purring softly, the sound rumbling through the bed like a gentle engine. Yuna smiled. Her body hurt everywhere, but she did not care. The cubs were alive. They were safe. That was all that mattered. "Hey," she whispered. "Wake up, little ones. I think I am going to be okay." Tal woke up first. His eyes went wide when he saw her looking at him. Then he let out a sound that was half roar and half laugh and threw himself onto her chest, hugging her with his small arms. "You are awake," he shouted. "Burrow, Kira, she is awake." The other cubs woke up and joined the hug. It was awkward and painful and wonderful all at once. Yuna felt tears running down her face, mixing with the fur that was pressed against her cheeks. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved us first," Barrow said. His voice was serious, but his eyes were warm. "We are pack now. Pack takes care of each other." Yuna laughed. It hurt her ribs, but she did not care. Pack. Yes, that was exactly right. They said the human would not survive, but the human had taught the predator cubs something more powerful than survival. She had taught them love, and love, it turned out, was the strongest force in the galaxy. The storm raged for hours. It screamed around the cave like an angry beast, throwing ice and snow against the rocks. The temperature dropped so low that even the fire seemed to shrink back from it. Burrow did not sleep. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Yuna's face growing paler. He heard her breathing growing weaker. He felt the cold trying to push its way into the cave, trying to reach them, trying to finish what the crash had started. So he stayed awake. He fed the fire. He watched over his siblings. And he waited. Sometime in the middle of the night, Yuna stopped moving. Burrow did not notice at first. She had been so still for so long that it was hard to tell the difference. But then Tal made a small, frightened noise and pointed at her face. "She is not breathing right," Tal whispered. "Her chest is not going up and down like before." Burrow looked. The cub was right. Yuna's breathing had become so shallow that it was almost invisible. Her face was white as the snow outside. Her lips were turning blue. She was slipping away. "Wake up," Burrow said. He shook her shoulder gently. "Human, Yuna, wake up." She did not respond. Her eyes stayed closed. Her body was cold under his paws. Kira started to cry. The same soft, whining sound that Velky cubs made when they were scared and did not know what to do. Tal joined her, pressing his face against Yuna's arm and making small, desperate noises. Burrow felt something strange happening inside him, something he had never felt before. It was like a fire, but not a warm one. It was hot and angry, and it burned in his chest. It made him want to hit something, to fight something, to do something. "Stop crying," he said to his siblings. His voice came out harder than he meant it to. "Crying will not help her. We need to think. What can we do?" Kira asked between sobs. "We are just cubs. We do not know how to save her." "She taught us things," Burrow said. "She taught us how to make fire. She taught us how to stay warm. There must be something else we can do." He tried to remember everything he knew about humans. They had different bodies than Velky. They needed different things. They got hurt easier, but they also healed if given the right help. His father had told him once that humans had machines and medicines that could fix almost any injury, as long as the help came in time. Medicine. That was what Yuna needed. Something to stop the bleeding. Something to give her strength. But where would they find medicine on a frozen moon? The shuttle. The thought hit Burrow like a lightning bolt. The shuttle had crashed, but it was not completely destroyed. He had seen it. Pieces of it were scattered across the snow. And inside those pieces, there might be supplies. Emergency equipment. Med-dash boxes. Every shuttle carried med boxes. It was the law. His father had told him that too. Red boxes with a white symbol on them, filled with everything a person needed to survive an injury. If he could find one of those boxes, if he could bring it back to the cave, maybe Yuna would live. But the storm was still raging outside. The wind was strong enough to knock a full-grown Velky off his feet. The cold was deadly. If he went out there, he might not come back. Burrow looked at Yuna. She had thrown her body over them when the shuttle crashed. She had taken the damage meant for them. She had walked through the snow with blood running down her back, leading them to safety. She had taught them how to survive. Even though every word must have cost her more strength than she had given everything for them. Everything. What kind of Velky would he be if he did not try to give something back? "I am going to the shuttle," he said. Kira and Tal stared at him with wide eyes. "You cannot," Kira said. "The storm will kill you." "Maybe," Burrow admitted. "But if I do not go, she will die for certain. I have to try." "Then I am coming too," Kira said. She stood up, her small body shaking but her eyes determined. "You cannot carry a med box by yourself. They are too heavy. We saw them on the ship. You need help." "And me," Tal said. His voice was tiny but brave. I am coming too. I can help. I am small, but I'm strong. Burrow wanted to argue. He wanted to tell them to stay in the cave where it was safe. But he looked at their faces and saw something he had never seen before. They were not just scared cubs anymore. They were Velki. They were pack. Stay close to me, he said. Do not let go of each other. If one of us falls, the others pull them up. We go together, or we do not go at all. The cubs nodded. They moved to the mouth of the cave and looked out at the storm. The wind hit them like a wall. Snow and ice flew through the air so thick that they could barely see 3 feet in front of them. Burrow took a deep breath. Then he stepped out into the storm. The cold was worse than anything he had ever felt. It cut through his fur like knives. It tried to freeze his eyes shut. It pushed against him from every direction, trying to throw him down, but he kept moving. One step, then another. Then another. Kira was beside him, her claws digging into the ice to keep her steady. Tal was behind her, holding onto her tail with his tiny paws. They formed a chain, each one connected to the others, fighting the storm together. They could not see the shuttle. They could only guess at the direction based on where they had walked earlier. Burrow led them through the howling wind, trusting his instincts to guide him. Several times, he thought they were lost. The storm was so thick and the night was so dark that everything looked the same. But then Kira pointed at something on the ground. Blood. Frozen red drops in the white snow. Yuna's blood, marking the path they had walked before. They followed the trail backward, step by terrible step. After what felt like hours, they found the shuttle. Or what was left of it. The main body was crushed and broken, half buried in snow. Pieces of metal were scattered everywhere. The wind had pushed some of it around, making the wreckage even more chaotic. Burrow started searching. He tore through the debris with his claws, throwing aside broken panels and shattered equipment. Kira joined him, her smaller claws working quickly. Tal did what he could, pulling at loose pieces and pushing aside snow. There! Kira shouted suddenly. Her voice was almost lost in the wind, but Burrow heard her. He turned and saw her pointing at something red in the darkness. A med box. Bright red with a white symbol. Just like his father had described, Burrow ran to it. The box was trapped under a heavy piece of metal. He grabbed the metal and pulled. It did not move. He pulled harder. His muscles screamed. His claws scraped against the frozen surface. Kira came to help. Then Tal. 3 small cubs, pulling together with all their strength. The metal moved. Just a little. Then a little more. Then it came free. Burrow grabbed the med box and lifted it. It was heavy, almost too heavy for him. But Kira took one side and Tal pushed from behind, and together they could carry it. Back to the cave, Burrow said. Fast. They moved as quickly as they could through the storm. The med box was awkward and heavy. The wind was still trying to knock them down. But they kept moving, following the trail of frozen blood back the way they had come. When they finally reached the cave, they collapsed inside. Their fur was covered in ice. Their bodies were shaking with cold and exhaustion. But they had done it. They had found the medicine. Burrow opened the box with trembling claws. Inside were bandages and tools and small tubes of liquid. He did not know what any of it did. But he remembered something Yuna had said earlier. The instructions are always on the labels. Humans make everything simple so anyone can use it. He looked at the labels. There were pictures, diagrams, simple words in both human language and the common galactic script that all species could read. This one, he said, pulling out a tube, for bleeding, and this one for strength. Working together, the cubs did their best to follow the instructions. They cleaned Yuna's wound. They applied the medicine. They wrapped her in bandages. They gave her the strength liquid, dripping it carefully into her mouth. and then they waited. Barrow did not know if it would work. He did not know if they had done it right. All he knew was that they had tried. They had given everything they had. He lay down beside Una, pressing his warm body against her cold one. Kira and Tal did the same, curling up around her like a nest of fur and claws. Outside, the storm began to fade. The wind grew quieter. The snow stopped falling. And in the cave, a human woman took a deep breath. Then another. Her color slowly began to return. The cubs had made their choice, and that choice had saved a life. The cave was small and dark, but it was shelter. That was all that mattered. Una had to crawl the last few meters to reach it. Her legs had stopped working properly somewhere along the way. The cold had gotten into her muscles, making them stiff and slow. The blood loss had made her weak and dizzy. More than once, she had fallen to her knees in the snow and thought about staying there. But she had not stayed. She had gotten up again. Because 3 small cubs were watching her, following her, depending on her to know what to do. Now they were inside the cave, away from the wind and the open sky. The rocks around them blocked some of the cold. It was not warm, but it was better than outside. It was a place where they could rest, where they could think. Una lay on her back, staring at the dark ceiling above her. Her breathing was fast and shallow. Her heart was beating too hard. She could feel her body starting to shut down, starting to give up the fight. No, not yet. There was still work to do. She forced herself to sit up. The pain in her back screamed at her, but she pushed through it. She had been hurt before. She had kept working before. This was just another day at work. Just another patient to save. Except the patient was herself. And her helpers were 3 frightened children who had never been taught to survive. "Borrow," she said. Her voice was weak. She had to try twice before the word came out clearly. "Borrow, come here." The oldest cub came closer. His golden eyes were wide in the darkness. He could see better than she could in the low light. All Velki could. They were predators, after all. Their eyes were made for hunting in shadows. "I need you to listen to me," Una said. "I am going to teach you something important. Something that might save your life." "What is it?" Borrow asked. "Fire." The word hung in the air between them. Borrow looked confused. Kira and Tal moved closer, curious despite their fear. "Fire?" Borrow repeated. "We know what fire is. It is dangerous. It burns. Our teachers told us to stay away from it. Your teachers were wrong." Una smiled, even though it hurt. "Fire is dangerous, yes. But fire is also life. On a cold world like this, fire is the difference between living and dying. You need to learn how to make it." She looked around the cave. There was not much to work with. Some dried plants that had grown in the cracks of the rocks. Some pieces of cloth from her torn uniform. And the small emergency kit on her belt, which she had almost forgotten about. She opened the kit with trembling fingers. Inside was a first aid pack, a small knife, a signaling mirror, and a fire starter. It was a simple tool, just a piece of metal and a rough surface to scrape it against. When you scraped them together, they made sparks. Sparks could become fire. "Come closer," she said to the cubs. "Watch what I do." She gathered the dried plants and the cloth into a small pile. Her hands were shaking so badly that she dropped things twice. Kira helped her, picking up the fallen materials with her small claws and putting them back in the pile. "Good girl," Una whispered. "You are helping. That is good." She took the fire starter and held it over the pile. Then she scraped the metal across the rough surface. Sparks flew out, bright and orange, falling onto the dried plants. Nothing happened. The sparks died. "Again," Una said, more to herself than to the cubs. She scraped again. More sparks. Still nothing. On the third try, one of the sparks caught. A tiny flame appeared, small as a baby's fingernail. Yuna leaned down and blew on it gently, giving it air to breathe. The flame grew. It spread to the cloth. The cloth caught fire. Fire, Tal whispered. He had never seen fire this close before. His eyes were huge, reflecting the orange light. It is warm. Yes, Yuna said. It is warm. And warmth is life. Remember that. She fed more dried plants into the fire, building it up slowly. The cave began to warm. Not much, but enough. Enough to push back the cold that had been eating at them since the crash. The cubs moved closer to the fire. They held out their paws, feeling the heat on their fur. Tal made a small sound of happiness, a purring noise that Yuna had never heard before. It was the sound of a comfortable cub. A safe cub. Now, Yuna said, I need to teach you how to do this yourselves, in case I cannot do it later. Baro looked at her sharply. What do you mean? Why would you not be able to do it? Yuna did not answer. She did not need to. They both knew why. The blood was still coming from her back, slower now, but still coming. Her face was pale. Her hands were cold. She was dying, bit by bit, and there was nothing any of them could do about it. But she could teach them. She could give them the knowledge they needed to survive without her. That was something. That was enough. Take the fire starter, she said, putting it in Baro's paw. Feel how it works. The metal and the rough part. You scrape them together, fast and hard. Try it. Baro tried. His first attempt was too gentle. His second was better. On his third try, sparks flew out and landed on the ground. Good, Yuna said. Now you know. You can make fire. You can stay warm. She taught them other things too. How to find dry materials for burning. How to keep the fire small and controlled so it would not spread. How to put it out safely when they did not need it anymore. The cubs listened carefully, their ears pointed forward, taking in every word as she taught. Yuna felt herself growing weaker. The edges of her vision were going dark. Her thoughts were becoming slow and confused. She was running out of time. One more thing, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper now. The most important thing. The cubs leaned closer to hear her. Stay together, Yuna said. Take care of each other. You are a pack now. A family. When one of you is cold, the others keep them warm. When one of you is scared, the others give them courage. Do you understand? Baro nodded slowly. We understand. Promise me. I promise, Baro said. Kira nodded. Even little Tal put his paw on his chest and made a small, serious sound. Yuna smiled. It was a real smile this time, not forced or fake. She had done what she could. She had given them a chance. That was all anyone could ask for. She lay back down on the cold stone floor. The fire was warm on her face. The cubs were safe beside her. Outside, the wind was starting to howl. The storm was coming. Tell me a story, Tal said suddenly. His small voice broke the silence. My mother always tells me stories when I am scared. Yuna opened her eyes. She was so tired, so ready to sleep. But the cub was scared, and he had asked for a story. How could she say no? Once upon a time, she began, her voice soft and far away. There was a little girl who lived on a blue planet. She was afraid of the dark. She was afraid of the cold. She was afraid of being alone. The cubs pressed closer to her, sharing their warmth. Tal put his head on her shoulder. Kira curled up against her side. Even Baro, who was trying so hard to be brave, leaned against her back. But one day, Yuna continued, the little girl learned something important. She learned that she was never really alone. Because wherever she went, she carried the people she loved inside her heart. And as long as they were with her, she could face anything. The dark, the cold, even the end of all things. Her eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. The storm hit the moon with all its fury. The wind screamed. The temperature dropped. Ice and snow flew through the air like knives. But inside the small cave, 3 cubs kept watch over a dying human. They fed the fire. They shared their warmth. And they waited for the night to pass. They did not know if she would survive. But they knew they would not leave her. Not now, not ever. She had protected them. Now it was their turn to protect her. The main ship hung in orbit above the frozen moon like a giant metal bird. It was a Velki warship, one of the largest in their fleet. Inside, hundreds of Velki soldiers and workers moved through the halls, each one doing their job with the focus and discipline that their species was known for. In the command center, Elder Mako stood before a wall of screens. He was old, even by Velki standards. His fur had turned gray at the edges, and his golden eyes had grown dim with time. But his mind was still sharp, and his word was still law on this ship. The screen showed the frozen moon below. One of them showed a small dot of heat, moving slowly across the ice. That was the shuttle, or what was left of it. The sensors had picked up the crash. They knew exactly where it had gone down. "The shuttle is destroyed," said the officer beside him. His name was Darrow, and he was young and eager to prove himself. There were 4 life forms on board, 3 Velki cubs and 1 human female. "I know who was on board," Elder Mako said. His voice was low and rough, like rocks grinding together. "I gave the order to send them. The cubs are from important families," Darrow continued. "Elder Barrow's grandson, Commander Kira's daughter, and the child of the High Priest. If they die, there will be questions." Mako closed his eyes. He did not need to be told about the importance of those cubs. He had known their parents. He had watched them grow. And now they were down there, on that frozen rock, with nothing but a human to protect them. A human. Of all the species in the galaxy, humans were the strangest to him. They were small and weak, with no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons of any kind. Their bodies were soft and broke easily. They could not survive in extreme heat or extreme cold. They needed food and water constantly, like hungry little animals that never stopped eating. And yet they had spread across the stars faster than any other species. They had built ships and stations and colonies on hundreds of worlds. They had fought wars against species much stronger than them and won. It made no sense to Mako. How could such weak creatures accomplish so much? "What is the human status?" he asked. Darrow checked his screen. The sensors detected significant blood loss at the crash site. The human was injured in the impact. Based on the temperature on the surface and the severity of the injury, our calculations show that she will not survive more than 6 hours. Possibly less. And the cubs? They appear unharmed. The human must have shielded them during the crash. Darrow paused. A foolish decision. She should have protected herself. Now she is dying, and the cubs have no one to help them. Mako turned to look at the young officer. There was something in Darrow's voice that bothered him. A coldness. A lack of understanding. "She protected the children," Mako said slowly. "That is what prey animals do. They sacrifice themselves so the young can live." "Exactly," Darrow agreed. "It is the instinct of prey. The strong survive. The weak die to feed the strong. It is the natural order." Mako said nothing. He turned back to the screens and watched the small heat signature on the moon's surface. It was moving slowly but steadily toward a cluster of rocks in the distance. The human was not lying down to die. She was walking. She was looking for shelter. Interesting. "Should we send a rescue team?" Darrow asked. The storm, Mako said. When does it arrive? Darrow checked the weather sensors. A major ice storm will hit the crash site in approximately 4 hours. Wind speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour. Temperature drop of 60 degrees. Nothing can survive on the surface during such a storm. Then, we cannot send a rescue team until the storm passes. That will be 12 hours from now, at least. Mako nodded slowly. Then the human will be dead long before we arrive. And the cubs will have to survive on their own. There was silence in the command center. Several Velki officers exchanged looks. The cubs were young. Too young to survive alone on a frozen moon with a storm coming. Without help, they would freeze to death in the night. The cubs are Velki, Darrow said finally. They are born to survive. They have claws and fur and the instincts of predators. If anyone can survive, it is them. They are children, another officer spoke up. Her name was Sora, and she was one of the few females in the command center. Children who have never been taught to hunt or build shelter or start a fire. They have spent their lives on ships and stations, surrounded by warmth and food. They do not know how to survive in the wild. Then they will learn, Darrow said. Or they will die. That is the Velki way. Mako raised one clawed hand, and the room fell silent. He was thinking. His old mind was turning over the problem, looking at it from every angle. The human was dying. That much was certain. Her soft body could not handle the cold and the blood loss. She would be dead before the storm arrived, probably dead before nightfall. When she died, the cubs would be alone, but they would not be helpless. They had fur to keep them warm. They had claws to dig and fight. They had instincts buried deep in their blood, instincts from a time when the Velki were wild hunters on a wild world. Those instincts might wake up when the cubs needed them most, or they might not. The cubs might panic. They might freeze. They might give up and lie down in the snow and wait for death to take them. Mako did not know which would happen. He could not know. All he could do was wait and watch and hope that the blood of their ancestors would rise up in them when it mattered most. We wait, he said finally. We cannot risk a rescue team in the storm. We will go down when the weather clears. If the cubs have survived, we will bring them home. If they have not, we will bring their bodies home for proper burial. And the human? Sora asked. Mako was quiet for a long moment. The human will not survive. She is soft. She is injured. She has no fur, no claws, no instincts for this kind of world. By morning, she will be frozen solid. He turned away from the screens. The meeting was over. The decision was made. There was nothing more to discuss, but as he walked toward the door, Sora spoke again. Her voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. Elder, may I ask a question? Mako stopped. Speak. The human shielded the cubs during the crash. She took the damage that would have killed them. She's walking now, injured and bleeding, toward shelter. She is not lying down. She is not giving up. Sora paused. What if we are wrong about humans? What if they are not as weak as we think? Mako did not answer right away. He stood in the doorway, his back to the room, thinking about the question. He had lived a long time. He had seen many species come and go. He had watched empires rise and fall. And in all that time, he had learned one thing. The galaxy was full of surprises. Things that seemed certain often turned out to be wrong. Creatures that seemed weak often found strength in unexpected places. But humans? Surviving a frozen moon with nothing but willpower? No, that was impossible. The human would die. The only question was whether the cubs would die with her. She is still prey, Mako said finally. And prey does not survive on a predator's world. He walked out of the command center, leaving the screens glowing behind him. On the frozen moon below, a small trail of red blood stretched across the white snow. And at the end of that trail, a human woman was still walking, still breathing, still fighting to stay alive. The Velki said she would not survive. They were certain of it. They had never been so wrong about anything in their lives. The warning lights turned red. Then they turned off completely. That was worse. Una grabbed the metal bar above her head and held on tight. The rescue shuttle was falling. She could feel it in her stomach, that terrible feeling of dropping too fast. The engines were dead. The pilot was dead too, his body slumped over the controls with blood on his face from when the asteroid had torn through the front window. She was alone. Well, not completely alone. Behind her, pressed against the back wall of the shuttle, were 3 small creatures. They were Velki cubs, children of a powerful alien species that most humans feared. The Velki were predators. They had sharp teeth, claws that could cut through metal, and fur as dark as space itself. Adults stood 7 feet tall and could kill a human with one swipe of their hand. But these were not adults. These were babies. The oldest one, Burrow, was maybe 10 years old in human time. His sister Kira was 8. And the smallest one, Tal, was only 5. Their eyes were wide with fear. Their small claws scratched at the wall as the shuttle shook and spun. Una was a medic. She had joined this mission to help. A Velki transport ship had sent a distress signal, and the United Species Council had responded. When they arrived, they found the ship damaged and burning. Most of the Velki crew was dead. Only these 3 cubs survived, hiding in a storage room. Una had volunteered to take them back to the main ship. She was good with children. She was gentle and patient. The Velki commander had looked at her with doubt in his golden eyes. Humans were small. Humans were soft. Humans broke easily. But there was no one else, so he agreed. Now the shuttle was crashing, and Una understood why the commander had been worried. The frozen moon below them grew larger in the cracked window. It was a ball of ice and rock, with no breathable air and temperatures that could kill in minutes. The shuttle's emergency systems were trying to slow them down, but it was not enough. They were going to hit hard. Una made a decision. She let go of the bar and ran toward the cubs. Burrow growled at her. It was instinct. When Velki were scared, they showed their teeth. But Una did not stop. She threw her body over all 3 of them, pressing them into the corner and covering them with herself. "Close your eyes," she said. Her voice was calm, even though her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. "Hold on to me. Do not let go." Small claws dug into her jacket. She felt Tal's face press against her chest. Kira whimpered. Burrow was still growling, but his arms wrapped around her waist. The shuttle hit the ground. Everything became noise and pain. Metal screamed as it tore apart. Una felt herself thrown sideways, then up, then down. Something sharp cut across her back. Something heavy slammed into her leg. She held onto the cubs with all her strength, refusing to let go even when the world was trying to tear them apart. Then it stopped. The silence was strange after so much noise. Una opened her eyes slowly. She was lying on her side, still curled around the 3 cubs. The shuttle was broken into pieces around them. Cold air was coming in through the holes in the walls. She could see the gray sky of the frozen moon through a gap above her head. "Is everyone okay?" she asked. Her voice came out weak and rough. Burrow moved first. He pushed himself up and looked around with his golden eyes. There was fear in them, but also something else. Something like surprise. He looked down at Una, at her arms still wrapped around his siblings, at the blood spreading across her back. "You protected us," he said. His voice was young, but it had the deep sound that all Velki had. "You used your body as a shield. That is what you do," Una said simply. You protect the little ones." She tried to sit up and gasped in pain. Her back was on fire. When she reached behind her, her hand came back red. The cut was deep. She could feel warm blood running down her spine and soaking into her clothes. Kira started to cry. It was a strange sound, like a small animal whining. Valky children did not cry like human children. They made soft noises that came from their throats. Tal was shaking, his small body pressed against Yuna's chest. "I am okay," Yuna lied. She smiled at them, even though it hurt. "I have had worse. One time, I fell off a ladder and broke my arm. This is nothing." It was not nothing. She knew that. The cut on her back was bad. Her leg was also hurt, maybe broken. And the cold was already starting to bite at her skin. They were on a frozen moon with no shuttle, no communication, and no way to call for help. But the cubs were alive. That was what mattered. Yuna forced herself to stand. Her leg screamed in protest, but it held her weight. Not broken then. Maybe just badly bruised. She could work with that. "We need to move," she said. "We cannot stay here. The shuttle has no heat, and the cold will kill us before morning." Baro stood up and helped his sister to her feet. Tal stayed close to Yuna, his small claws holding onto her pants. He was the youngest, and he was the most scared. Yuna put her hand on his head, feeling the soft fur between his ears. "It will be okay," she told him. "I promise." She did not know if she could keep that promise, but she would try. That was all she could do. They climbed out of the broken shuttle and stepped onto the frozen ground. The air was thin and cold, burning Yuna's lungs with every breath. The emergency suits they wore gave them enough oxygen to survive, but they did not stop the cold. Already, Yuna could feel her fingers getting stiff. She looked around. The moon was empty and gray, with rocks and ice stretching in every direction. There were no trees, no buildings, no sign of life. Just cold and silence and the distant stars above. But there, in the distance, she saw something. A dark shape against the gray rocks. A cave, maybe. Or at least some kind of shelter. "There," she said, pointing. "We go there." She started walking. Every step hurt. She could feel blood still running down her back, feel her body getting weaker with every passing minute. But she kept moving. The cubs followed her, their small feet crunching on the frozen ground. They said humans were soft. They said humans were weak. Maybe that was true. But humans were also stubborn. Humans did not give up. And Yuna was not going to let 3 children die on this frozen rock. No matter what it cost her Dot, she walked on, leaving a trail of red drops in the white snow behind her.